Tom, I believe this was one that was like emailed in, right? The rank every quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So again, lots of different ways to get to us, but we liked this at least in terms of how it would really force us to expand our horizons right here. So our task was to rank quarterbacks who started a game last year and are back for 2025. It is not quite ranking starters. It is not quite ranking quarterbacks, but it is the beginning of both those, as we might be having the quarterback draft and some other rankings related activities coming up a little bit later in the year. So we have pre-made some top 10 graphics to unveil. Danny, do you want to get us started?
Let's do it. All right. So there was a little bit of in the chat, the group chat, there was a little bit of difference of opinion of what a starting quarterback could be. So that'll unfold. What's that?
I said we were throwing haymakers at each other.
Yeah, exactly. We were throwing haymakers. I also want to make it clear, and I think Tom sets this one apart. This is not a look at the NFL draft for 2026.
Correct.
This is college quarterbacks returning to form, expecting another big year from. I will kick it off. This was not influenced by anybody that was at the spring game this past weekend. But my number one quarterback, I was big on him going to the playoffs. He backed it up against Texas, having one of the better games of his season. Give me Cade Klubnik, one of the most experienced quarterbacks in the entire country. I think he's perfect for what Clemson wants to do. Once he got another year under his belt with Garrett Riley, started to settle in. I think he's going to put up really good numbers again. He's got to start faster than he did last year against an SEC defense. We saw him struggle against Georgia. He does play him at home there at LSU. We talked a little bit about that game, but I think he's going to have a phenomenal year for the Clemson Tigers. Just how far they can go, probably determined by how much of a step up he can take, how much they can run the ball around him. But I had him number one. Number two, I had Garrett Nussmeier out of LSU. Phenomenal. Just got to kind of rein him in just a little bit. He's got the big play capability. He's got all the physical tools, physical skills. Just gets a little bit loose with the football, as we saw a couple games last year that ended up costing him. Sawyer Robertson. Who was the first one on Sawyer Robertson? Was it Tom or Bud? Bud's been on Sawyer Robertson.
Oh, no. Is Tom going to claim
Tom?
it?
Don't make me pull out my QB power rankings from last season and give you the date. Come on now.
Yes. So Sawyer Robinson, incredible year he had last year for Baylor. I think he's going to be an absolute stud this season. Sam Leavitt, we got a glimpse of him. I would expect him to make big strides. Another quarterback, led his team to a Big 12 title. The Mateer pairing, this one's kind of a wild card. I wonder how he's going to make that jump into the SEC. Much stiffer competition, but I think his skill set translates. Love the fact that he's come with his offensive coordinator. Haynes King, I thought was one of the more underrated quarterbacks this season. Got to stay healthy. He takes a pounding when he plays, but when he does, I think he really elevates Georgia Tech to another level. Carson Beck, even with the multiple games with 3 interceptions, still put up monster numbers. Playing a weaker ACC could help him going against some of those defenses, but I still want to see what he does. If he can return to the form of 2 years ago when he had Brock Bowers, Lad McConkey, I think that, hurt him this past season. I had him up there. Drew Aller, I wanted to put higher, but he's the one who needs to take that step forward so that he can play his way into this list. And then finishing it out with 2 SEC quarterbacks in Lenore Sellers and DJ Lagway. I had Sellers slightly ahead just because of the dynamic playmaking ability. And then DJ Lagway, I felt like he made this list because of what he did those last 4 games. Statistically, wasn't that big, but I think the sky could be the limit for him. If he could, another year in Napier's system, more comfort, there's no question he's not rotating in and out of games. I think he could have a monster year for the Gators. And maybe the record doesn't unfold, as good or about, as it did at the end of the season. But I expect DJ Lagway to have a much better season and a big step forward for the Gators.
And there is some just who you got to this, right? Like, who do you want, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
We're not taking an NFL draft evaluation. No. We're just saying, in the college football world, how successful do you think you're going to be?
There's also an element of there are certain guys who, if you're running a very specific system, I think you want. Pavia is one of the most valuable players in the sport relative to how much value he provides to his team. But
I got him at 19 and I don't feel great about it. I feel like he should be higher, but I slotted him at 19.
Exactly. So it's if you're doing value to their team, Pavia is way up there, but if you put him on other offenses, probably not.
Interesting. All right. So how do you guys want to do this? I kind of think we should just all show our cards, then dig into it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it works out.
Okay. All right, Bud, why don't you go next?
All right, let's throw mine up there. So I really only had one guy different than Danny. Our order is just different. So I had Lagway 1. Obviously, he's got to be healthy. Otherwise, I'm going to look really, really dumb for this. But I do think if he's healthy, he's the best player in college football. So I'm pretty sold on what he can be if healthy. But the shoulder thing or whatever he's got going on, that does scare me a lot, actually. And like he had some stuff going on last year too. He's got to be right. But to me, it's a bit of like a Jacob deGrom type situation. If he stays healthy, I think he's the clear number one. Like if you give me 12 games of Lagway, I'd be shocked if there's anybody better than him. But again, I don't know if I'm going to get 12 games, so I might look really dumb for this. Nussmeier too, right where Danny had him. I had Drew a little bit higher. There's probably some projection of improvement. We're pretty close on Sawyer. Cade Klubnik, I know we just talked about a lot. I think I'm a bit of a Sellers doubter relative to my buddy Brad Crawford who loves Sellers. Watching Sellers in that bowl game against Illinois where Illinois ran the same coverage over and over again. He was just really confused, and Illinois kind of trapped him into taking this kind of little crappy check down, right? And they just tackled it for a 2-yard gain. That's a win for the defense over and over and over again. That was concerning, but there's nothing that says you can't get better at reading defenses. And also, I think South Carolina doesn't have a lot to throw to necessarily. I think Damon Williams is a dude. Okay. Think about Washington had a guy last year playing quarterback who was 25 years old, and they were still really needing to work Damon Williams in because they thought he was that good. He took over the bowl game and looked awesome. He was 300, 200 in the bowl game or something insane like that.
And for those listening at home, Damon Williams is the Washington quarterback.
Yeah.
And and to your point, he got the nod late in the season, got the start for the bowl game. So as a starter last season, qualifies here for our rankings.
Which was a large part of our group chat argument this morning. Should a guy that starts the bowl game count? But according to the verbiage that Chip used, it was has to start a game.
Right.
Mr. Lawyer over here. Your Honor, I point to the verbiage in the rundown from Chip Patterson.
Sam Levitt in here as well. Haynes King, and then John Mateer, who I think is more of a runner than people realize, but I think will work pretty well in Oklahoma's system that they're running, given that they also took his offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle. The one guy I was I got to find a place for him. There are really two. Beck and Altmaier.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen pretty good stuff from Carson Beck before. I could look dumb for not having him on my list, but he wasn't very good last year. Then he got hurt, so I guess we'll see. That. Arch should probably be on this list too, but the production wasn't quite maybe what Son had. So we'll see what Tom has or what Chip has.
Tommy, take us through your top 10.
Mikey, if you want to get it up there. I know at number one, my number one will surprise people based on what I've said on this show. But when I went into these rankings, what I was going on was based pretty much I think that as we've watched college football in recent years, it's a lot like college basketball at the quarterback position where you want experience. And the more experience your quarterback has, typically the better off you are. So Cade has plenty of experience. He played well last year. I don't love his long-term potential in the NFL, but as Danny said, we are ranking college football quarterbacks here. And I think Cade has a good argument to be the number one QB coming back. So I've got him at 1, Drew Aller at 2, all the tools, everything. Just he struggles in big games. That's really the one thing that's holding him back at this point. Arch Manning, I just like his potential. I think that he has a chance to be the best quarterback in college this year if he lives up to it in that offense with that coach, with those players around him. He's got a chance to have a monster season. Danny touched on it a bit with Beck. Maybe moving to the ACC will help him where he's not facing SEC defenses every single week, although he never had to face Georgia's. But still, as long as he's, it's a little bit easier of a schedule, see if he can bounce back. Nuss, I will never not love the cannon. Just that's a trait that not many guys have. And it's one of those things where what if it clicks, and we've seen this with Josh Allen, and I know he's the exception, but when you have an arm like that and it does click, boom, you are going to be a great player. Sawyer Robertson, who, just for the record, first appeared in my Tom Fornelli's quarterback power rankings on October 23rd, 2024, in which I wrote at that time, Baylor's not having a good season, but there is some reason for optimism in the future, and his name is Sawyer Robertson. The Bears scored a surprising 59-35 win over Texas Tech over the weekend, with Robertson throwing for 5 touchdowns. He didn't begin the season as Baylor's starter, but since taking over the role, he's amassed 1,408 total yards and 16 touchdowns in 5 games. If he keeps playing like this, considering the rest of Baylor's schedule, it's not too crazy to think the Bears could salvage the season with bowl eligibility. And guess what? They won every game from that point on. So, boom, I'm taking that one. Finally, I've got Altmaier at 7. That's not homerism. That's just knowing ball. Like, come on. If you watched him last year, you know.
He's good.
Lenore Sellers at 8. Devin Dampier, who I love, watched him in New Mexico, winning so much money betting New Mexico overs last year because of Devin Dampier and that wonderful Lobos defense. And then Lagway, who I agree with Bud. If he hits who he is, wow. But I need to see him do it and stay healthy before I can put him any higher than 10.
Yeah, Devin Dampier, Utah's quarterback now, as Utah is just thrilled to have a starter with a pulse that is currently alive. You know, just something that is really good. Utah's been through a lot, you know, having a deceased quarterback. So glad that Devin Dampier is going to be able to bring some life to the position. All right, let's throw up my top 10. I'm already starting to sense where I'm way too high, where I'm way too low. We've got some consensus here, at least in terms of a lot of respect for Cade Klubnik, the Clemson quarterback. I've also got Drew Aller at 2. Lenore Sellers up at 3. I was going through and I was looking at the way he played. Bowl game criticisms are 100% fair, but the way that he played against some of the best competition that he had, I was looking at Sellers and Nussmeier. Lenore Sellers had a better touchdown to interception ratio against ranked opponents than Garrett Nussmeier did. We talk about the decision making and how Nuss just kind of, for all that arm talent, just won't always be able to put it in the right spot. DJ Lagway rounds out my top 5. I do have Arch Manning at 6. I'm not going to give up on Nico. I included him here in my top 10. I think that it was interesting at the end of last season to go through and really start looking at some of those throws, some of those misses. And when we start assigning blame, there was definitely something to be said that Nico didn't all of a sudden get worse. Nico all of a sudden maybe didn't have the best supporting cast. Now, you would hope an elite quarterback can level up everyone around him. I think he's going to be able to do that here with another year under his belt. Luke Altmaier here, I knew I had to have him in the top 10. It was just a matter of exactly where to place him. Sam Levitt, his started the season as kind of the playmaker, you know, the gutsy guy, finished the season as a much better thrower, in my opinion, and was able to do it even losing those wide receivers to injury. Then I'm also not going to give up quite on Carson Beck. I've got him rounding out my top 10. All right, couple names that I noticed that I want to get into, a couple names that were on some lists, not on others. We'll get into all that and more next.